Welcome to the Power Exit Podcast. This show is dedicated to business owners who want to scale up, plan smarter, and prepare for the ultimate exit. We'll talk with M&A experts and owners who've been through the process to provide actionable advice so that you can sell your business on your terms and without regret. I'm John Marsh. Join me as we prepare to take control of your exit. Andy Suggs, thank you for being here as a guest on the Power Exit Podcast. You're a good friend, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come talk M&A and branding with me. But why don't you tell the audience who you are, what rebranding is, a little bit of background on who Andy Suggs is would be awesome.
Sure. No, appreciate it. Thanks again for having me. I think that this topic is an often underappreciated topic for exits and businesses. But Andy Suggs, I'm born and raised in Atlanta, went to the University of Georgia. I'm a owner of a branding agency, rebranding. We've been around, actually, this is our 25th year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I think to summarize who Reckon is, I think we're a creative agency with the heart of a branding agency. So we help a lot of our clients kind of truly understand like what's their story, where they're planting their flag within their industry. But then also continue to partner with them to execute and manage that. Because we often feel that's where a lot of branding agencies fail their clients, is they come up with a really strong brand, but then hand it over and expect them to know how to apply it and how to manage it, and when we need to edit some stuff or tweak some stuff, and that's where it usually falls apart. So
yeah. Well, I'm excited for this conversation too. As an M&A guy, a former accountant, former CFO, I don't get it. I don't really get the marketing, the branding side. I understand the importance, but I don't get it. And I think that translates to a lot of business owners as well.
Yep.
Like, you're telling me I need to spend X number of dollars on a branding exercise. So I think that's why we're here today, to understand how it can really matter and impact it. I think I've seen it, or I have seen it, with transactions on how a brand can impact it. But before we get into that, and I'm excited about that, I also am excited about your perspective as a business owner. We've talked about it before. Your business at some point down the road is going to transition. And I want to understand how, from a branding perspective, you're building it for that, right? And I think that'll translate to a lot of nuggets here for the audience. But tell me about Reckon. Tell me about because it was first called the Visual Lab, right? And again, congrats on the 25 years. We went down to celebrate at the Ads Garage, had a great event with a famous comedian. Remind me of his name.
Jack McBrayer.
Jack McBrayer, who 30 Rock fame and other places. Talladega Nights was my favorite. But yeah, so tell me about Reckon, what the name is, and maybe walk us through the rebrand that you went through yourself from the Visual Lab to where you are today, and why the impetus for that transition.
Yeah, I think for us, it was 2019, so we were about to celebrate our 20th anniversary, and so, of course, as a branding agency, we decided to rebrand ourselves and throw away all that equity. But that was actually, I think, the light bulb moment for us, and the fact that I think the name, the Visual Lab, was becoming a hindrance in the sense that it really just sounded like a design shop.
Oh.
And, we want to be really more strategic, more holistic in the partnership and the strategy that we do and work on for our clients. So honestly, when we wanted to rebrand and rename, we went through our own process that we lead our clients through. So part of one of those exercises we do is called your brand essence exercise. And basically the goal of that is to, you go through these categories, you talk about how you want to be perceived, what you feel your strengths are. You talk about your ideal clients, what are they looking for, and hundreds and hundreds of words, but it culls down to, the goal is to get to 3 words. And for us, those 3 words that we centered in on were curious, practical, and Southern. So curious because we're not a big fan of like having a templated approach. Like we have to know, or we feel like every branding opportunity should be respectful of their reality. And that can mean budgets and timing and competition and their space. And we're always, asking ourselves, is what we're doing the best thing? Are we doing it the best that we can? So there's that hunger, desire to always be improving yourself. So I think that for curious, what made a lot of sense. Practical, I kind of already talked about this a little bit. Budgets are budgets, and some clients can afford spending over $100,000 in 6 or 9 months for a branding exercise, and
Right.
some that's 3 years worth of their marketing budget. And there's just no way. And so we don't necessarily want to turn those away. So we'll figure out and come up with a solution and approach that makes sense for them. And Southern, I probably will say y'all a few times before this episode is done, but it's for us, it's really more of like a lifestyle, it's just like, I think we've heard from our clients, we tend to be pretty humble. We have a very strong work-life balance, which is critically important for us as an agency. So I think it's more about like, just kind of how we carry ourselves and how we, interact. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's thanks for sharing that. I like the Southern aspect of it. I like the creative. I like the curious. It comes together, and it's who you are, which I
Well, and that was the thing. Like how we came up with the name was honestly we had hundreds of names, and if you throw Reckon into the conversation of curious, practical, and Southern, it fits.
yeah, yeah.
And there's kind of this weird, like, yeah, that makes sense, but in no way describes what we do or what we provide.
Yeah, and you were a resource to me when I rebranded my firm and founded the firm. I want to say this the right way, but when me, a business person who's just driven by numbers, or when I hear essence, I think, what is this frou-frou stuff?
Yeah.
But I realize now
Yeah.
there's more to it. So
Yeah, absolutely.
because ultimately you are driving profitability, right? That's what the goal of a rebrand is. I mean, not maybe the number one goal, but it's got to be, right? You've got to be able to sustain the business and drive it forward. So, how do you think Reckon did that for you, or was going to do that for you as a business owner thinking about, you know, 20 years down the road? How do you think this brand is going to serve you, Andy Suggs, your employees, for your ultimate exit?
Yeah, it is a situation that, to an entrepreneur, any also, serial entrepreneurs are going to run into this if they're building something to sell it. And while I think Reckon as it is right now is more of like a lifestyle business for me, it's pays my bills, but this isn't like an idea I had. Like this is supports my passion and what I enjoy doing.
Which is what?
Um, Creative problem solving.
Yeah.
I think that that's probably the best way to describe it. But to that point, in our industry and a lot of businesses our size, your value is frankly your book of clients and the work that you have. And for like many others, that's extremely relationship driven. So it has to go away from, my business partner is Dana. So it goes away from the Dana and Andy show to the Reckon show.
Yeah.
And I think to do that, you have to have a presence in your space that is known as a part of your business's ongoing voice and thought leadership in the space. So then there's a value to Reckon. So what I want to do is I want to grow Reckon to have such equity in the brand and the name that when someone does come in and I decide to step aside, they're not just buying a book of business. They're actually buying the name and the brand.
Sure.
So as a branding agency, that's my ultimate goal.
And you want that name and brand to be driving calls into your business. It's some sort of referrals. It's
Right.
not, hey, I worked with Andy Suggs.
Right.
The grad is, I work with the Reckon team.
Yeah.
So, our audience, if there are any listeners, I hope there are business owners who are going to transition. So, we talked before this episode a little bit about some success stories. You mentioned Aaron's, the Mr. T campaign that you were a part of. And it seems like there was a lot of data behind the success of that campaign.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through, obviously Aaron Rents is a very large customer of yours, a very large company.
Sure.
And that might not apply to all the listeners, but there are some nuggets there that you learned through that campaign. So talk to me a little bit about how the a campaign is measurable, or how you can look at, hey, I'm investing all these dollars in
Right.
a brand. What's my ROI on that?
Yeah. And I think I think it's worth a discussion to talk about Aaron's and how they did that. But I think even when you bring it down to businesses our
Yeah.
sizes, we don't have the funding or the opportunity to track and the metrics that a larger company can. But there are things that you can do as a business owner. So for the Mr. T campaign, the challenges that we were tasked with was that their shopper, who was comfortable or familiar with the concept of rent to own, was frankly aging out,
Okay.
and the new customer didn't even really understand what that meant.
Now, quick question: is that us, those customers, born in 1980? Is that why Mr. T was there?
Yeah, so it would be, yeah, all right. Although I would argue that really our goal was to have the brand better known through even younger age,
Okay, got it.
which again, you wouldn't think Mr. T, but surprisingly, based on all the data,
Wait, are you knocking Mr. T?
listen, if your teenage daughter knows who Mr. T is at our age, I mean, that's a rare thing. But surprisingly, he indexed extremely well.
Okay. Indexed, what is that?
Celebrities get a score. Q score is one of them. And as a comparison, Shaquille O'Neal, who you see him everywhere, he has a Q score 97. Surprisingly, Mr. T had a Q score 96.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow.
for the money, um, it was a great partnership.
Fascinating.
So coming up with a concept of it was actually the double A team without even really thinking about we could get Mr. T, but just the idea of the double A from Aaron's and the double A for the A team. And we had this concept of this crew that came in and made people's homes happier and better because you can immediately replace it, get a better TV or a better sofa or fix a washer dryer that works. So, thankfully, the client, Aaron, loved the idea, and they're like, let's go see if we can get Mr. T. And 3 months later, we're on set in LA shooting with him. So, but yeah, so for Aaron's, they did some pretty intensive research, and pre-campaign, they had an awareness score of 49.
And I'm sorry, but for me and the listeners, what is that campaign? Obviously video, but how's it being distributed? In TV
Yeah.
or
Although, yeah. So and this is true, I think, with any company, you think about all the touch points that you have with your customer. So for Aaron's, obviously, they have a pretty substantial marketing budget. So there's national broadcast, there's radio,
okay.
there's direct mail, there's social, they have email marketing, billboards, those in-store signage. So it's the holistic experience of the customer.
Very cool.
So pre-campaign, they had score 49 of the kind of people, the customer that they really want, not just general public, but like the ideal customer was a 49. And post-campaign, it rose to 58, which 9 points doesn't sound like a lot, but in reality, that's about 30 million more people who now knew who Aaron's was that did not know before.
Okay.
So that campaign worked really well. They have the data to prove it. Now, from a smaller business size, like the things that you can track now, which comes back to substantiating the value of your business, are the size of your followers and engagement. So it's great to say I have 3,000 people who follow me, but if they never pay attention to you and don't engage for your content, that's not really a value. Because as a prospective business owner, if I'm looking at the company, I want to see that audience are people, future customers,
Right.
that I could turn into customers, or I could exploit their network and have them let them know about their network, about my company. So I think when you start to see content's being engaged on social, videos you're creating are being watched, not just opened and
Sure.
closed. Emails are being opened and clicked on. Website traffic, words you're indexing for SEO, search engine optimization. Um, Paid campaigns, if you have them, how those are converting and sending people to your site.
Yeah.
So those are things on a smaller scale that if you can get hard data around and prove, that your community, you have an engaged community, that's going to increase where how you as a business owner can use your brand to make it more valuable.
Yeah. No, and that's helpful. I wanna maybe bring all the nuggets or all the information you've given us here into some real world situations that we've both seen. So, let's talk about some real world examples. An executive coaching certification company I sold to a private equity firm was able to detail for me, and we could then in turn detail it to the market, their ROI on marketing, what they were doing from a spend perspective, because not very few of our clients have the air and rents kind of
Oh, sure.
dollars.
Right.
So, you know, they were able to show that, hey, when I up my spend, my revenue 60 days later has a direct impact on my revenue and ultimately profit. So he could turn the floodgates on and off. Obviously, there's more to it than that. It's not that simple, or else we'd all be just giving marketers a lot of money. But that trend was helpful. So what can business owners who are our clients, own a $20 million, $10 million business, a $40 million business, what can they be doing practically? Are there agencies out there who not only help with branding but also help with the execution of it? Maybe help us understand how we can start thinking about marketing dollars and the brand, and how make sure we're not just dropping money down the drain, because that's sometimes what it feels like if you're not measuring these things.
It is, and I would argue that I think any spend you make to connect with audiences, you need to think about that as connecting them into a journey. Meaning that, as you create these outreach efforts and you're trying to get in front of new audiences, um, you, you have to think about more than just like how many clicks did I get to the website?
Mm.
Because that's where we get frustrated as an agency, because we see these specialists who come in and twist the numbers to their favor and leverage their clients not really understanding what those numbers are. So yeah, and like I could have said that, yeah, Aaron's came back and said that 50 million more people now know of Aaron's, but yeah, oh, by the way, only 500,000 of those are really the kind of truly would convert to a customer. So who cares? So it's the same thing. Like you can go in and be doing, pay-per-click campaigns, or just digital awareness campaigns. And you might be driving thousands of people to your website, but if no one's doing anything, then what's the point?
Right.
So when you're, creating outreach efforts, you have to gauge yourself against what you would consider industry averages. So are you performing above or below what
Yeah.
what others in your space are doing? That's how you can start to evaluate if what you're doing is working or not on a lower level. So even if sometimes we use digital advertising as our own focus groups, because you can go spend $500 and put it in front of the audiences and you just see which phrase or design or message is resonating with the audiences, and they answer the question for you.
Got it. Yeah. So I want to transition back to, we talked about the Aaron Rents.
Yep.
Right. And I mentioned the executive training program.
Yep.
Let's talk about some stories where it hasn't worked.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If you neglect your brand, you
Right.
neglect kind of the marketing aspect of your business, which we don't want anyone to do, right? We want power exit, take control of the process, take control of this well in advance. Um, let's talk about situations where it didn't go well. You mentioned something earlier. Can you elaborate? And
Yeah, there is one of our clients for many years, they're in the PM training space, getting your PMP certification, and one of their project management, thank you, yeah. One of their competitors was named after, and all of their marketing was centered around the woman, the owner and founder.
So like the last name was prominent or
Yeah.
gotcha.
And she unfortunately got cancer and passed away, and they hadn't planned for this. And so
How big of a company was this as far as head count? Do you know how many people?
I would guess a couple hundred.
Okay. So it's
So what is
basically
yeah.
okay.
Um so they basically had to proceed as if that hadn't happened and continued to use her in her marketing because that's what people recognize. That's was her brand was tied very closely to her persona.
Yeah.
And so that's I think a great learning opportunity for anybody as we look at our businesses and we're planning for exiting. If I as an individual am removed, is the value completely removed?
Yeah.
And, just by the nature of being entrepreneurs and business owners, it's there more often than not, there is a person who really is the driving force for the essence, the relationships, the connections of the company. But what you've got to do as a business owner is say, okay, well, what about that person is making this work? What about their personality? What is it that they're saying that their customers are connecting to and liking and referring for? So you basically, I call it digitizing that person. If you pull it down to the essence of what's behind, you may say, it's John, but John has the name John has no value. It's everything behind it, and so it's the same thing. There might be a name associated with that business and the leader, but the name is all of the only given credibility or value because of what's behind it. And as a branding agency, when we come into those situations, it's like, okay, something you're doing is working, something you're saying, how you're acting within your space, what you're saying that others aren't saying in your space. You just got to pull that out of your brain and translate that over into a business approach and verbal practices and visual practice that aligns and supports that.
Interesting. So in that situation where the owner unfortunately passed away from cancer, is the company still around? Are they still?
I honestly don't know. That's probably been about 15 years.
Gotcha.
But yes, yeah.
Um, so I don't want business owners to hear this and think, "Oh, I'm 55 years old. I want to be done in 3 years.
Sure.
I haven't done anything with the brand. My business is not transferable." That's not the case.
Right.
But so what if someone calls you and says, "Hey, I want to sell my business in a year.
Mhm.
I don't have time to go through this exercise where I'm determining my essence, the things that you just talked about that make the business go and digitizing that. What can I do in a 12-month period or a 6-month period to to solidify my brand
Right.
and help market that to the business to the buyer community?"
I would argue that hmm, even if it's not clearly documented, you have best practices for your brand. You have your logo, you have your colors that you use, you have your fonts that you commonly pick. So I think first and foremost, if you don't have those documented, that's what I would do. And that could be as simple as a one sheet. But you can also get a lot deeper into that. Um, so I think anything that you have that you're doing that you can document, go ahead and start pulling together, understanding your audiences and your email platform, if it's Constant Contact or MailChimp or whatever, paying attention to the open rates, paying attention to how and documenting your followers on your social platforms and are those growing.
Yeah.
So that's like very just gain awareness of what's going on. And frankly, if you do that and document it, that's probably still more steps than the
Yeah.
common business owner in your space will have made. Um,
What about the business owner who's 10 years out? Again, that 55-year-old who says, "Oh, I want to hang it up at 65." What should they do? I'd imagine there's more impact you can make because here's what I struggle with from my seat. if you're going to market in 12 months, you've got to get your financials in order. You've got to develop a strategic buyer list. You've got to document things from a legal standpoint. The branding often is neglected and think, hey, we're just going to. So the ideal situation is a business owner who's 55 and wants to be done at 65 really starts thinking about this now. Kind of like you with rebrand from visual ad to reckon.
Sure.
What should that person do? They come to you, and I don't want to give away the candy store here, but
Yeah, no.
but what are you going to do for them, and what can they do to really make the brand solid, so that when they exit, they're ready to maximize value?
Well, and I think that to be completely there is a link that I'll give to you that you can put in the notes.
Yeah, we'll put in the show notes for sure.
And that's a PDF that you can download that for any agency that doesn't have the money to afford a branding agency, it'll lead you through exercises that will help you start to gain awareness to what's going on with your business. So like that's a very easy thing you can do. But if I'm talking to a business owner and they're 10 years out, what I'm going to push them to do is start to, if you don't yet, document your brand, create a guide for your brand, start thinking about who your audience is and create personas for those, which any branding agency, marketing agency can do. Sharing and being able to demonstrate clarity on who your best customer is very valuable. Being able to also then share documented engagement, with your brand and whatever channel makes sense for your industry. That's what I'd want to show a strong history of and the growth in that. If you think about being able to create not only a style guide, but what we call a brand playbook, which gets more into your voice and your tone, how you walk and talk in your space, not just how you look. Which I would then that's a good point you made me think about. Like I often say when people talk about your brand and getting your brand in order, it's people innately think about your logo and your colors, and that's not your brand. That represents your brand. That is an item for someone to think about when they think of your brand, but your brand is the relationship you have with your community, your customers. So anything that you can document and share and show history of growth, like I said, social followers, people signing up for emails, thought leadership is huge well, any industry. So if I can go in and say that we have these videos that we release once a month and we have thousands of people who watch them, there's value you're buying that I don't have to spend marketing dollars just to get eyeballs. Like I already know I have engaged audiences if I'm looking at this business, right? So that's really where you can increase your value. And we call them your owned networks. So they're networks that you don't have to pay for anymore because there are people who have chosen to follow you, whether that's socially, emails, watching, listening to podcasts, whatever that would be. That's a network you own that you can get in front of without having to spend a dollar.
I like it.
And that's where you as a business owner thinking that way, that was where you can really build value.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure. Yep.
So, Andy, I would love to hear from you on some common branding mistakes. Kind of when someone comes to you and they've done it wrong, what have they missed the boat on?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question, and I would say 9 out of 10 times when we come into a new partnership with a client, this is what we find. And it's not that they're doing it wrong, they're just not doing enough to benefit them. And the common mistake is that people tend to sell what they do versus why them. So if I'm an IT company and I sell, managed services, uh, if someone comes to my website, they already know that's what they're looking for. I don't need to remind them what I do. They're already here. I need to tell them why they should pick me versus the other companies they're looking at.
Mm.
So I think when you look at when you look at your site, and if you could easily pull off your logo and pull out your name, and basically it looks like your competitor's site, there's no difference. You're promoting your industry, and people who are already there know they need your service. They again need to know why they should pick you over the other, and that kind of story um, helps you become not a price driven brand.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I think if you look at what you're saying and how you're trying to differentiate yourself, if it falls under the buckets of price, promotion, or products, your services, like those change, and people can always do it for $5 cheaper. So if your essence, your brand, your message is tied exclusively to one of those three, it's a very short-lived and weak brand stance. Um, I think another common missed opportunity is people think about marketing and branding is to get someone to make a purchase, sign up for your service, whatever that, sign a contract. What you really miss is then how do you turn your happy customers, your community into advocates for you?
Mm.
So to do that, you don't want them every time only think about you when they get their invoice in the mail or whatever that would be. You become a very transactionally grounded brand. But if you're continuing to help them by giving them tips or advice or helpful information, whatever that would be, and then that also, so when they have someone who is in their space who needs the service that you offer, they're more quickly think of you because your brand is in a positive light in their mind.
Top of mind.
Exactly.
Well, you hit on two things that are really important that a lot of people can't detail, and that's the customer acquisition cost. How much does it cost? What's the value of that customer? And that's where marketing matters, right? Because we hear, there are three parts to the story when you're marketing a business for sale. What the problem was and what problem you saw in the market when you founded your business, where you are today, and where you're going, right? And even if you're retiring, the business still needs to have this growth story. And I get excited when a client tells me, "Hey, I can measure my marketing dollars. Here's what I'm doing. Here's how I'm investing
Yep.
my money. Here's the return on investment." And most people can't do that. Most businesses cannot do that. So it speaks to the sophistication of the business when they're able to communicate that. I don't hear from owners on what their brand essence is, what their brand means behind the logo, behind, like you talked about the website. That's a great analogy of stripping the website down to just the words,
Mhm.
right? And what are you saying, and is it really different than
Yeah.
any other M&A advisory or any other branding firm out there? So that's a something that
Yeah.
is really important to take home. Um, I do want to talk a little bit about the private equity playbook and how, private equity comes in a lot of times to buy a business because it can be improved. They're not buying perfect businesses. They see an opportunity to buy something that's good
Mhm.
and make it great. And one of the things that they do is creating either an existing brand. Sometimes they'll keep the logo, the brand that they've acquired. They're obviously going to start measuring these things we've talked about: acquisition cost, dollars spent, where their marketing money is going. But other times they're rolling these things into an existing platform, an existing business, and they have to integrate that brand and that culture, obviously accounting, ops, all these different things into the parent organization. Talk to me a little bit about how that process would work if you've got a company that is acquisitive. What are the key things that private equity or that big company is doing to bring it all under one brand?
I would say to really do that as best as you can to migrate to brands, and if you're pulling it into a bigger one, to do that, it really needs to be respectful of that unique
Mm.
situation, because I think you've got to consider what is that parent brand representing? What's it saying? What are they doing in the space? Why does it make sense that this other brand is now joining them?
So let's say Rec and Brand's hired by one of these firms. What are you going to come in to assess what that brand is? What is a little bit of your playbook or process when you've got an existing brand to understand exactly what it is, those unique nuances that make that brand what it is?
Yeah.
And then you can come up with a plan. So
Yeah.
maybe tell us a little bit about what that process would look like from Reckon's standpoint as you're doing that discovery.
Yeah, and honestly, John, any client we work with, we do that discovery first. Because if we can't be a consultant and an advisor, then we have no value.
Right.
So I think whenever there's a new client we're working with, we come in, we interview their leadership team. We understand from their perspective, like, how do they want to be perceived? Like, how do they want their competitors to think about them? How do they want their customers to think about them? How do they want people who work for them to think about where they are? Then we look at the what's the potential. So if you think about, we're moving from perception, like how do we want to be perceived, to what's going on in our space? Where's the opportunity, the potential for us to solve a need, to offer a service, to bring something new that's never been done. So we look and see, okay, what are we as a brand doing or saying better than others? And then does that then align with our positioning? So does what we do best, what our customers think about us, why they choose us, is that aligning to what we're saying? So you need those are the paradigms you have to get to acknowledge each other. Is like, you may think you think you want your customer to like you because of this, but they actually could like you because of that, and they're referring you because of that, and you're not talking about that. So you have to understand, and when you come in to evaluate a brand, is like, is what they're saying in their space ownable? Is what they're saying known by their community? Like, are they known for that? Um, what are you known for in your space? That's where we as a branding agency then can assess if they have a strong position, if there really is value to that. What can we support, and how does then you start to see how the story could unfold for we're bringing in this other business, that can be many different ways, but it all depends on what's that brand's position within their industry,
Yeah.
and how does, is this bringing on this new company a new service? Is it now allowing us to serve a different territory that we couldn't before? Is it now that we are just able to do more work because we're bringing in a great team? So
Yeah.
I think you had to be respectful of that specific situation and really lean on your marketing and branding team to help tell that story.
That's important, and it makes a ton of sense. This is not a I mean, what's an average engagement for you? Is it a 3-month engagement? Is it 9? Is it 12? And then after you come in, there's the execution of this,
Right.
of the new
Yeah.
brand or of the new.
For us, it does vary a little bit, determined by the size of the company we're working with, but it's usually about, 3 months, roughly, a little bit quicker for some, a little bit longer for others. But that gets us to a place where there's a lot of clarity on the brand, and we've evolved it if we needed to, whatever that would be. But then, um, our engagement beyond that is really, how can we support and empower that team to work from our findings? So is it updating their website? Is it updating their collateral, their social strategies? So I think, right now, I think our average tenureship is like every 8 years, per client. But that's because the kind of clients we work with, they need that partner to help apply and execute their project. Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
Andy, really thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. At Marsh Creek, we care about empowering owners to take control of the process so that they can exit on their terms without regret. And as we opened here, this is something that is often overlooked. So I think you've given us a lot to think about from a branding perspective, and not neglecting that, especially as you think about an eventual transition of the business. So really, again, thank you for being here. If someone were to want to get in touch with Andy at Rec and Branding,
Sure.
how would they do that?
Well, you basically just said my email address, Andy at reckonbranding.com. But yeah, check us out. Reckonbranding.com is our website. We have a contact form there. If someone wants to set up a time, more than happy just to talk and kind of help high level assess your situation and no cost. And I don't want to try and force myself as the solution. We know we're not the perfect solution for everybody, but if we feel like there's a way we can help you out, we definitely would love the opportunity.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thanks for listening to the Power Exit podcast, and tune in next time. Thank you.